Super Mario RPG, originally released in 1996 for the Super Famicom, was the first game in the Mario series to really have an active story throughout the game. Lots of dialogue, plenty of new characters and named locations, the whole shebang. It introduced us to the Mushroom Kingdom as we've never seen it before, as a full world. The original game was remade on Switch last year, and that version is the one that I will default to throughout this video. If you haven't played it, I really highly suggest doing so. I had a lot of fun with it. And also just be aware that I'm going to be talking about this game without any care for spoilers whatsoever. So if you plan on playing it and don't want to be spoiled, you've been warned. But before we talk about that, I kind of need to do the YouTube thing, so we'll make this quick. If you like what you see, remember to like the video. If you want to see more videos like this, then subscribe to the channel. In particular, I would like to suggest my video on Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. I think that was a really well done one. I'm pretty proud of it. Although there's a lot of great videos on the channel for a variety of series, so you'll find something you like, I'm sure. Anyways, let's just get back to the video. The game was originally produced by Squaresoft and licensed by Nintendo. Square is known for a number of other series, the most notable of which being, of course, the Final Fantasy series. As such, the Square team decided to add a number of references and connections to that franchise, which I'm sure you can guess we will be talking about a lot. I put in a section at the end of the video devoted entirely to the Final Fantasy references and connections to give that discussion a little bit of focus. Chapters can be found in the description if you want to just skip ahead, but for those of you who are in it for the long haul, let's talk about the world of the Mushroom Kingdom as is presented in this game. The game gave us a map of the Mushroom Kingdom, but likely it's not supposed to be one-to-one with how the Mushroom World is actually laid out. The game shows Mario's pad, Bowser's castle, and Peach's castle is all being extremely close to one another. Likely this really isn't the case because, for all the castles Bowser owns, I doubt any are this close to where Mario and Peach live. The Mushroom Kingdom is also shown in later games to have other nations on its borders, including the Bean Kingdom and the Flower Kingdom. So portraying the Mushroom Kingdom as an island would contradict with those later games. That said, even if the maps are inexact, the locations shown on them are still real. This is also the first game to give us a good look at Peach's castle. It shows us the city that sits outside its gates. The city would return in later games, going by the name Toad Town. There's an area of the map that seems to be under the control of a clan of tyrants named Boosters. The current Booster, 7th of his name, is an absolute man-child obsessed with trains and combat. It's unclear though if he actually rules anything, or if the area around his tower was just named after the family. Maybe they're just rich, or some kind of minor nobility, I don't really know. It may even be possible that this area isn't technically within the borders of the Mushroom Kingdom. Yoshi's Island is shown to be somewhere off the coast of the Mushroom Kingdom, and not too awfully far off either, as it's connected to the mainland by an underground pathway known as the Pipe Vault. I know that the English name of the island is technically Yoster Island, which seems to be some kind of reference to Easter Island, but the two locations share a Japanese name, so they're likely intended to be the same place. A group of pirates live in a shipwreck not far from shore either, under the leadership of Captain Jonathan Jones, a mysterious figure who wears a costume to make himself look like a shark. Nimbus Land is shown to be another nation adjacent to the Mushroom Kingdom, sitting in the sky above Land's End and Barrel Volcano. This is, without question, an entirely separate nation with its own monarchy and native people, though it doesn't really seem to interact with the surface very much. Monstro Town is a place for reformed monsters to live in peace. The leader of the town is a toad woman named Monster Mama. Alongside the monsters, a number of deserters from Bowser's army have found peace here, including the shopkeeper Goomhild and the Koopa Troopa soldier Jagger. The origins of the town are unclear, but I thought about a couple of different possible origins for it. It could be that the city was founded and named after Monster Mama, who seems to be more than happy to surround herself with these outcasts from society. Alternatively, it was founded by people who worship the monster below, whose temple is nearby. The third option is that the monsters were naturally drawn to a dark force that sits in the center of the town, that we will get back to later, as he is an entire can of worms in and of himself. Alongside those locations and a number of others, the game also introduces us to a bunch of new races, including the Moles of Mole Town, the Cloud People of Nimbus Land, and the Frogs of Tadpole Pond. None of these groups go on to see reuse in later games, though it may be possible that the moles are somehow related to the Monty Moles. One group introduced in this game that we would see later, however, are the Star Spirits. The Star Spirits are guardians of the Star Road and granters of wishes. is their duty to protect the road and its wish-granting abilities. While none are seen in their natural form in this game, Mario does get one in his party after it possesses a doll named Geno. We'll get to see more Star Spirits in their natural forms come the first Paper Mario game. The Star Spirits, and Star Road as a whole, are integral to the Mario lore. This is because they are the grantees of wishes, and thus have major powers over the Mario world. Due to this, they are also the source of all children in the Mario universe. In this world, children are not produced through traditional methods of reproduction, but instead by a wish from the heart. There have also been theories connecting the Star Road to some versions of Rainbow Road, as both are made up of rainbow-colored stars. They are also likely to be connected to the similarly named Star Road found in Super Mario World. But honestly, this should probably become its own separate video now at this point. The power of stars and other space-themed items in the Mario universe really run deep. Alright, so getting back to the specific game at hand, let's talk about its villains, the Smithy Gang. They're introduced during Mario's assault on Bowser's castle, when one of their generals, a towering sword named Exor, falls from the sky, piercing the castle, destroying the Star Road, and sending everyone inside flying. Exor's mouth forms a portal to Weapon World, the world where Smithy resides. That said, there must be some other form of transit between these two locations, as Exor clearly needed to get to the Mushroom Kingdom somehow. Weapon World is mostly made up of a giant factory, from which all the weapons created by the Smithy Gang hail. The area around the factory is just kind of a place of nothingness. A bunch of ruined platforms floating in space. Makes you wonder about the backstory here. Did something else exist here before it was destroyed? We'll probably never know. Inside the factory, we can see all the members of the Smithy Gang in various stages of production. To my understanding, they appear to be some form of robots. Even the bosses we fought throughout the game, Spiritovich, Bowyer, and the like, are not individual beings, but are instead mass-produced just like the smaller enemies. These unfinished recreations are given the name Machine Made. That said, the thought peak for Clay Morton's Machine Made implies that they share the memories of the versions that Mario fought before.
Mario, I'm back.
Another Machine Made that's very notable is the Shy More. These are enemies fought throughout the game and look a lot like Shy Guys on pogo sticks. However, the Monster Manual makes it clear that these enemies are not actually Shy Guys, but instead a similar group that serves Smithy. It seems to me like Smithy decided to start creating robotic duplicates of the Shy Guys after meeting them. Though to be clear, that is once again just a theory. Smithy himself also looks to be a giant robot, which seems fitting given his role. He has the ability to create machine-made with ease. His body is shown to be able to transform into various other forms, including that of a treasure chest, a coffin, a wizard, and a tank. However, the form shown here is stated to be his true form, so likely the Emperor form shown in the first phase of the fight is just another transformation. Interestingly, during his boss fight, the remnants of other, older Smithy robots can be seen in the background. This never gets explained and once again could imply many things. It could be that Smithy had upgraded himself over time and abandoned older bodies, but I find it more likely that, much like the rest of his gang, Smithy too was at one point mass-produced. But now only one remains, whether it be because the others failed or by his own hand. If you have theories about the origin of Smithy, I would be very excited to hear them. Without Smithy, the whole operation falls apart. The robots can no longer be built, and Exor is shown to disintegrate. Likely the rest of the weapons do as well. Without their creator, they are nothing. Whatever magic animated them is gone, and there is simply no more. Presumably, this is also the case for other weapons created by Smithy. Even outside the main story, there's a lot of other relevant topics to cover. So let's talk about the one that's probably the most polarizing, the Guerillas. Spelled like this, but yes, they're also that. Take away the chains, and do these guys look familiar to you at all? Yeah, these guys are based on the King of Swing, the Banana Slamma, Donkey Kong himself. The Japanese name, Doseki Yongu, is even more blatant, being a direct corruption of the Japanese name for Donkey Kong. They have a stronger variant called the Chain Kong, or Barrel Kong in Japanese. First off, I don't think they're members of the Smithy Gang. The Chain Kongs are only found in Barrel Volcano and Bowser's Castle. This specific brand of ape is stated to be native to the Barrel Volcano. There's only one found in Bowser's Castle, so likely that one is just an actual prisoner or a conscript. The Monster Manual gives us some backstory to these creatures. Apparently, some years ago, there was a village of gorillas, but for whatever reason, a group of them had to flee the city and move into the volcano. Over time, they became differentiated from the gorillas. It's unclear why exactly they wear shackles and chains, especially the chain Kong, since they clearly left the village on their own. Also, this exodus was in no way a recent event, as the manual makes it clear that the shift to using the chain Kong name happened over time. The thought peak for the gorillas specifies that they are not actually related to Donkey Kong, despite having the Kong name.
I am a work of fiction. Any resemblance to pre-existing apes is purely coincidental.
We have seen Kongs who aren't related to the Kong clan before, most notably in Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. Maybe there's a connection there? Let's file that for later and move on. Punchinello is a boss I wanted to talk about too. He seems like he really should be a member of the Smithy Gang. He has a weird, unnatural look about him, he's after one of the star shards, and has an obsession with the weapon, bombs. However, he seems to be completely unrelated to them. He's familiar with Bowser's notoriety, and is clearly in his reputation era because he's entirely focused on what the people of the Mushroom Kingdom think about him. It's not really a lore revelation, but is, I imagine, a common misconception. Birdo is someone who, at one time, was considered very important to this game's lore. I even mentioned it in my video on Super Mario USA. The fact that she comes from an egg in this game makes it seem like this is the first time she's met Mario, tying this game heavily to Super Mario USA. However, the remake makes it clear that this isn't the case, as her thought peak quote says she already knows Mario. Therefore, at least one game where we meet her, probably Super Mario USA, needs to come before this one on the timeline. Though the timeline and its various changes can come into more focus later. But finally, let's get to the part that I'm sure most of you are waiting for. Or maybe you skipped ahead from earlier in the video. If that's you, hey, welcome back. Nice to have you. Let's talk about Final Fantasy. References can be found throughout the game, but the ones that seem most notable to me come in the forms of the Czar Dragon, Exor, Bahamut, and of course the super boss Culex. The Czar Dragon is a reference to the Kaiser Dragon, a super boss removed from the original Final Fantasy VI, but was re-implemented in some of the later remakes. Funnily enough, this means that it appeared in Super Mario RPG before it was officially added into any Final Fantasy game. The dragon's second form, Zombone, also has its roots in FF6, though that's just a basic enemy rather than a powerful boss. Also, am I the only one that wants to pronounce this word Zomboni? Like, is that just a me thing, or do you guys get it? I find it interesting that the Czar Dragon gets burnt to a crisp by lava and still retains its life and its mind. It shares a lot of remarkable similarities to Dry Bowser, introduced in New Super Mario Bros. DS, as well as the Dry Bones in general. It must be a very similar process that caused them both to end up the way they did. Exor, alongside being a member of the Smithy Gang, also serves as a reference to Excalibur, a powerful sword that makes appearances in most Final Fantasy games. Bahamut is a large red dragon named after the summonable creature from the Final Fantasy series. The game's super boss, Culex, is a Dark Knight from a kingdom called Vanda, who serves a mysterious dark mage. But the problem is, nothing I've said since introducing Bahamut is actually true. Bahamut's Japanese name is Doshi, implying that he's at least a relative of the Yoshis. He actually shares his name in that language with Dory from Super Mario 64. Though obviously those two are not the same creature. There's still some cool stuff here, but the Final Fantasy connections were entirely added in the localization. The same is largely true about Culex. Sizable portions of his backstory, monologue, and even his name are complete fabrications in the localization. This is a little embarrassing since I did an entire video talking about it when the remake was first announced. Despite losing all of that though, Culex is still worth some discussion. Now don't get me wrong, there are parts of Culex that do reference Final Fantasy. The 4 magic crystals are a trope of early Final Fantasy games, and the item that he gives you for beating him the first time, the Quartz Charm, is called the Crystal Amulet. It features smaller shards of all 4 crystals. In the Final Fantasy games, collecting all 4 crystals can be a source of great power, like in Final Fantasy II, when collecting them all can grant the power of the Ultima spell. Even his Japanese name references the crystals, being translated as crystalline. Now, where exactly Culex comes from is a matter of debate. The English version of the game states that he's from the universe of Last Illusion, a name that alludes to Final Fantasy, but is still technically different. In Japanese, however, the universe is described as Saigo no Gensho, which could be translated either as Last Illusion or Final Fantasy. I'm not sure which one it's meant to be, as this specific render of the series title, to the best of my research, has never been officially used. But at the same time, the Japanese title of the series is in katakana, rather than the kanji and furigana used in Super Mario RPG. The pronunciation of the title is different as well, with the official Japanese name being Finaru Fantaji. I could honestly understand arguments going either direction. However, he does state that he traveled through the interdimensional rift, which is a kind of world between worlds that connects the various parts of the Final Fantasy multiverse. And yes, this reference remains intact in Japanese, so I'm leaning towards him being from some world in the Final Fantasy multiverse, even if it's not one that we've seen before. It would also imply that Mario's universe is somehow connected to the Final Fantasy multiverse, which wouldn't make sense, as this is far from the only time the Final Fantasy characters have appeared in a canon Mario game. Upon meeting Mario, Culex admits his confusion with the 3D world he's presented with. The classic Final Fantasy games that he was created as a reference to were all 2D games, so he comes from a world without depth. He can barely conceive of Mario's world, and his lack of understanding of the power of the third dimension both alarms and intrigues him. Upon his defeat, Culex promises to return with knowledge of the power of the third dimension and departs. In the original game, that was the end of his story. But then the remake came along. In the remake, after the party defeats Smithy, Mario reawakens at his home in a time before Smithy was defeated, being told by Toad that he simply dreamed the confrontation, and that he hasn't traveled to Weapon World to complete the final battle. Things aren't exactly the same as they were though. Many of the powerful foes that they fought throughout their adventure have new wishes that can be viewed at Star Hill. Balome wishes for relief for his scratchy throat. Punchinello wishes for fame and notoriety. Booster wishes for someone to play with him. Jinx wishes to learn more from his new master. And Johnny wishes for the greatest fight of his life. One by one, the party completes these battles, facing off against old foes and granting their wishes in the stead of the still destroyed Star Road. In doing this, they build up a great amount of wishing power, enough to do something equally magnificent and terrifying. When approaching Culex again, their combined power grants his wish, the wish to gain power over the third dimension. In the presence of the party, Culex transforms into his final form, Culex 3D, a terrifying force stronger than anything else in the game. Upon his defeat, Culex will remain, and will refight the party whenever they desire, seeming to enjoy their battles despite his consistent losses. And now we need to ask the big question for every video in this series, the timeline. There are a few moments in the game that I used to pinpoint exactly where I think this game should go. Mario by this point is well established in the Mushroom Kingdom. This seems to be a series of dolls based on his adventures, possibly a predecessor to the mini Marios from the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series. Mario seems to also be friends with one specific Yoshi on Yoster Isle, who is likely the same Yoshi as from Super Mario World, placing this game after that one. Birdo, as mentioned earlier, does appear as the boss and has a rapport with Mario already, so this game needs to be after Mario 2 USA. Actually, this change in the remake would change our timeline placement for USA as well, since she was part of our reasoning for its current placement. This lets us pull the game a little further back, but still probably after Mario World, due to Peach being able to fight. It could go in a variety of spots, but I'm going to place it right after Super Mario World, keeping the game as early as possible. Overall, I think I'll put this one between Super Mario World and Super Mario USA, keeping the game once again as early as possible, which is generally how I try to do things with this timeline. While we're discussing timeline changes, I also want to move Super Mario Kart and Mario's Tennis. After discussion with a few people, most notably Samburger Theories, who is a commenter who watches this channel, I was reminded that DK Jr. looks to be older in those two games, while he retains his childlike look in Mario Clash. So those two games need to shift after the Virtual Boy title, making our new timeline with all the updates look something like this. This game was a bit of a shakeup, but what else do you expect from the first RPG in the series? Okay, I'll leave you guys there. We've covered a lot in this video, my throat's starting to hurt, and there's just so much left of this game still to explore. If you want to talk about your theories, then you can do it in the comments, or you can come over to the Discord server. I'd love to have all of you guys, and there's a lot of conversations I want to have about this game. So, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon.